I want to get into a discussion that's has been running throughout history in many different forms in Buddhism, in Islam, in Renaissance, and I named this video "Philosophers Can of Worms," and I'm gonna start talking about Giordano Bruno. He was a philosopher in Renaissance and he was executed for his beliefs, and they were considered heretical beliefs by the Catholic Church. And this discussion has also been going on in the Islamic world in many forms, and actually several great mystics like Hallaj, uh, he got executed um, for for expressing these beliefs, and it went on. But the advantage of talking about Giordano Bruno versus other philosophers is that this happened in the Renaissance. It happened in the Christian world. It didn't happen in a Muslim world. Well, if I brought this discussion in a Muslim settings, and then many Muslims they have heard this in one form or another, and they kind of want to miss the point. Uh, but when it's presented in another religion, in a different settings, it becomes very difficult to kind of sidestep the conclusions that this philosopher had come to, and why it matters. It also bleeds into future conclusions regarding cosmology, that the universe is a simulation, and this simulation uh, has its own agenda, its own ideas. It's like you're reading a book and it's full of hodgepodge stuffs and events, but the underlying story in the book has a grand design, or God's plan, or uh, Lady Universe, what she's trying to do, or you come to discover the algorithm behind the algorithms, the what this quantum computer is trying to say or do. Why is it doing all these simulations? I want to also start with the discussion about consciousness, and in the early part of quantum physics, they discovered that through the double slit experiment, that the consciousness of the observer, the human observer, can influence the outcome of a physical experiment that was done in the physical world. But if you replace this consciousness by some measuring device, by some camera, by something else, then the same effect will not happen. Uh, so this brought the many physicists to the conclusion that there is something in human observer above and beyond the physical world, that's is actually part of the universe. And when it this consciousness decides photon is a particle, it will be a particle, and if it decides it's a wave, it will become a wave. But if there was a camera or a measuring device that was doing that, that will not happen. So how can this be? Then this led to another discussion, and this is exactly why this video is called uh, Philosopher's Can of Worms. Because when you open a can of worm, and there is a little leeway for the first worm to get out, then pretty soon you have a whole bunch of worms running everywhere and will be destroying your philosophical frameworks. In the case of Giordano Bruno, it destroyed the theology of Catholicism, and they couldn't stand him. They had to kill him. Uh, well, the first worm was the discovery that, hey, there is consciousness of the observer, and this observer must be human. And then the second worm was that, hey, this consciousness is part of the universe. It's we got a problem. Then the third worm that came out was that, hey, humans, we evolved from other creatures, from dinosaurs, from whoever, whatever, and then it was all done in the physical world, using like genes and molecules, and these added up. Then it how did it create something that was above and beyond it, and is really actually part of the consciousness of the universe? That how did that happen? How was the jump from the physical world, from the molecules, from stuff? It became something more than that. It became something detached and beyond all this. And well, there's a lot of worms that are coming out after this one, but a lot of people who are psychic, or they say, I just don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in detached mind. No, no way. But I am afraid of them. So the speaker, he knows that there is ghosts, that there is detached consciousness, detached minds, and but his philosophy, his thinking doesn't allow for that. His thinking saying, no, no, this cannot be. And then the next worm comes out of the philosopher's can of worms, that actually there is consciousness. The consciousness is part of the universe. This consciousness can be detached, and actually the universe is a grand consciousness, or a quantum computer. It has a mind of its own, and it can do things or present a world. And then the next thing that happens is that this consciousness, this universal consciousness, or bits and pieces of it that are in different sentient beings, is all there is. All that has meaning or sense, or what it's trying to do, is all that matters. Everything else is crap. Everything else is objective reality. It's like you go to a movie theater, is the screen. The screen itself doesn't matter. What is projected onto the screen by the projector, the consciousness, it's all that matters. So, uh, well, Imam Ali says that whatever I looked at, I saw a reflection of myself. That they were like a lower form of consciousness that was evolving into becoming God consciousness, or the universal consciousness. Well, the setting that Giordano Bruno presented his argument was like this. He was a philosopher and an astronomer. At his time, Renaissance, they had discovered, or they had made telescopes. And using telescopes, many astronomers started looking at no, Saturn and Jupiter, and then look at the other further stars. Well, when they looked at with crude telescope to further stars, all they saw was a point of light because the star is too far to distinguish too much detail. But when they start looking at Saturn and Jupiter, they start seeing all these moons around Jupiter, particularly Jupiter. They saw four moons initially. There is many other moons, but then the idea came to them that hey, you know, Jupiter is like a sun, and these smaller moons are circulating about this sun. Well, then they found out that Jupiter is also circulating around our sun, and then at the same time or a little earlier, they had formulated that Earth and Earth and Mars and Venus are circulating about the sun itself. So they discovered the heliocentric theory of the solar system, and then Bruno Giordano went one step further and said that all these lights that you see in very far away places, yeah, they are really similar to our own sun. They are a world unto themselves. And probably around them, just like around the sun or around Jupiter, there is other moons, there is other worlds. And in these other worlds, there is probably other sentient beings like humans, or they might have evolved out of fish or other things, and then a whole series of other worms came out of the can that well in Catholicism, in Christianity, they believe that Jesus was the only son of God, and he when he came, he brought Christianity, he brought the spirit. But then now we are reaching the mathematical certainty or astronomical certainty that hey, there must be other worlds, and in these other worlds there is other forms of consciousness or sentient beings similar to us, and then probably there is a version of Jesus over there, and then what happens to our philosophical framework that hey, we believe in Jesus is the Lord, and his consciousness is the God consciousness, and then by this time the can is open and the worms are everywhere, and there is nothing you can do to fix this. Uh, then I think the Catholic Church tried to suppress these ideas, and then also they they didn't want Giordano Bruno to go free. They let Galileo go into house arrest because Galileo simply recanted. His theories were about Earth, about material world objects, and they could kind of rectify that situation and say, "Well, maybe we made a mistake. Earth wasn't the center of the world. So what? That doesn't damage Christianity the way we know it." But with Giordano Bruno, he had really let out a uh, host of damaging facts and beginnings of new theologies. They couldn't let that go, and they had to burn him. So then this discussion in Islamic world was when the Khalifa ordered the uh, execution of Hallaj. Hallaj was saying that that he is God. That's it. I have the God consciousness, just like Christians claim that Jesus is God. He said that the uh, you know evolution happens in the spirit, and a portion or something in the spirit is equivalent to Jesus, is equivalent to God. So this concept also got Hallaj killed. And well, then we can extend this argument, was saying that if there is sentient beings in other worlds, okay, and consciousness can evolve there too, and from this consciousness, some will be lower form of consciousness, some will be higher, and some will be godlike consciousness. So actually, consciousness is also has evolutionary points. And this there is some that are like God, some aren't. Some are more human, and there are these philosophers that get their heads chopped off. I'm sorry, my diabetes is kicking in. Let me try something. Then uh, then if we say that consciousness is has evolution, that like Hindus, they say that, well, you have all these chakras, and the lower chakra, the lowest one, is like a reddish color. The next one is kind of yellowish. The third one is the heart chakra. Is like a light green. It's very happy, like this and that. There is a throat chakra, and is blue. A little bit above that is I think the forehead is purple. Then the last one I think is white. Then the this is like an image of something. It's like you have a ghost that's really the consciousness, but this consciousness is part of the universal consciousness, and this ghost has many parts. The lower parts are like this, they're reddish, then yellowish, then blue, greenish, and so on. Then if we take white light and you break it through a pyramid, it will collapse into many rays, and the one on the left is red, and then becomes yellow, and then becomes green, and other colors. Or couldn't we say that light is really very similar to consciousness, that it has all these bands, and the the one that's like purple is really color of Jesus. If you are in this part of the consciousness, you are Jesus. But this Jesus can arise in different creatures. In even fish can evolve in their consciousness and become Jesus. Okay, so this is the kind of the conclusion Giordano Bruno's thinking was taking him, that hey, this spiritual evolution can happen. It can happen in any kind of creature, and then uh, depending on the level of evolution, then this part will be Jesus. This part would be like the light green would be Prophet Muhammad, and so on. And actually, we already know through scientific endeavor that the consciousness exists. And then what would be the what would be the next conclusions that it could be like this? Well, also in Shia, there is a discussion. Many Shia are like the Catholics. They believe that the last Imam will come one day, but this last Imam is really the exact person. The 12th Imam is not even a hair is misplaced. He he disappeared and he will appear, and he went into a time machine, and the time machine will just deliver him 1400 years later. And this is actually many Shia clergy, they also get in trouble for kind of disputing this idea, like Giordano Bruno saying, no, maybe this is the Imam will return, but he will return in spirit. That's uh, that's actually in end times predictions. uh, you know, Prophet Muhammad prophecy says that all the Imams will return. Jesus will come too. So this can't be. These physical bodies have perished and gone. But I think the real meaning is that the spirit will come back. The part of consciousness that Jesus will come back. The part of consciousness that Imam Hussein will come back. So this is the, I think, the correct interpretation. But don't quote me. I like this. I like it attached, not detached. And so this that's how these arguments have been progressing. But besides these philosophical, theoretical kind of musing and consideration, there is the mediums. Some of them, they can see divine lights. The divine lights or the lights of the chakras, they have different colors. Actually, I had a dream of Jesus. I could distinctly see color purple, uh, as if he became into a mist of purple. uh, well, with the Al Taha, the Prophet Muhammad and his family, I saw a green light, very happy light green light. Uh, that's the color. That's the part of the consciousness that's it in. Oh well, then some physicists are saying that the universe is a simulation, but you can also say that there is a universal consciousness that's just like this, and all it creates is is samples of itself, different. It's like you have a hologram, colorful glass, and you break the glass, and every shard has some of these colors. Some has more of one than the others. Okay, so this is what simulation could also mean, that the universal consciousness simulates itself in different creatures. These creatures, they can be fish, they can be made of different material. It doesn't matter. What matters is the manifestation. Well, thank you, my audience, for putting up with me and this really kind of lengthy and complicated philosophical discussion. My ideas and my lectures, they are totally research. I mean, you could go look in the internet and really look, you will not find this material in a in a unity, in a collection presented together like this. You will not find it. And this stuff is totally research. They are not something that you could find. Well, you could like study Buddhism or Shia Islam for like 20 years, and then you will be here where I just brought you. Thank you. Please subscribe. Don't be shy. Leave comment and all that. Thanks.